Hi. Yeah, I had a lot of thoughts as I was watching the film. The one image that comes up really early is the gentleman from the sheriff's office who compiled all of these images of individuals before and after meth use, and the um, kind of to convey how degrading the effects of meth use are to these people, and being able to see really how negatively it affects people as they go from happy, seemingly healthy people, and it having such a physical response to them that it's obviously affecting it's affecting their brain, it's affecting their mental health as they're um, grappling with this addiction. But how physically visceral those images were, I think, was very powerful. Also, they provided some information a little bit later in the film that some individuals are able to maintain a high for meth after only one hit, which can fuel a lot of increasingly negative behavior in such a long span of time. Having 24 hours to live off of a meth high just adds so much risk to an individual's environment that and the decision making process, that it's I feel like that would be a very difficult thing to be able to overcome when the altered state of mind lasts as long as it does, that it makes it difficult for people to sort of come back to earth from after their actions, and be able to start um, a more supportive pattern of behavior. Um, Also, one of the agency workers, as they were depicting some of the family effects of meth use, she said, "I do think these kids are orphans because their parents have been stolen from them by the drug." And I think that's just a very powerful idea, and is true of a lot of people. I work with formerly incarcerated populations. A lot of individuals who I worked with have have substance use disorders. A lot of them have used meth in the past, and I've seen how families have been torn apart and by use, and that a lot of the children of the people I work with do consider themselves, in a lot of instances, to have been orphaned by their parents' use. I also let's see here. Yeah, they just mentioned at one part. This is obviously pretty aged. The film, they mentioned that meth may be one of the most addictive drugs on the market right now, and I just thought to myself how distressed the filmmakers of this movie would be if they could see the state of heroin and fentanyl addiction in the United States right now, and that not only have the efforts taken to minimize drug use not necessarily been effective, but to see how much more excuse me, exacerbated a lot of the risk is in America. Um, and then I also just I didn't really have very specific thoughts on it, but just kind of lack of surprise to see some of the pharmaceutical lobbyists, prioritizing what they consider to be consumer needs over public safety, and the potential for abuse. Because God forbid anybody need a prescription for Sudafed, rather than making it as plentifully available over the counter as it still is today. Um, when I was thinking about things that I would have maybe done a little bit differently with the film, or things that I wish they would have spent more time with, I definitely noticed that they really prioritized the stories of law enforcement officials and government officials working on both sides of the topic, and kind of how the DEA and Congress have taken steps, or in either direction, to try to minimize methamphetamine use in America. And I personally wish they would have spent a little bit more time with the families of individuals who are affected by meth addiction, and getting to kind of prioritize their stories. They spent some time there at the beginning of the film to establish how meth affects individuals, but I think that for an American audience, it's probably more important for most people to have to sit with those stories and have to sit with the pain and the difficulty and the stress of those, rather than I just don't know if we needed 40 minutes necessarily on all of the government acts that have been taken on the issue. I think it would have been more impactful for mass audiences to have a little bit to have to kind of sit with that and maybe build a little bit more empathy for how individuals were affected. And then in terms of implementing this information into my own practice, like I mentioned, I work with formerly incarcerated populations. Pretty much all of my clients that I work with are in recovery in some degree or another, and a lot of the stories and the effects of meth is described in the film are things that I was already at least a little bit familiar with, but I'm primarily working with individuals who addiction is a part of their story, but they're currently in at least semi-successful stages of recovery. So I usually work with individuals sort of retroactive to their meth use, and so seeing some of these images definitely made me think about just kind of some of the people who I've worked with, who I care about in my client base, like maybe where they have come from. And I do a lot of recovery maintenance work with my clients, but just it was very helpful for me to kind of regain some of that perspective of seeing like where some of my clients probably have been in their lives, and maybe what their sort of situation would have looked like years ago when they were in the midst of active abuse. So really just sort of empathy building for my own mindset as I continue to work with this population. Thank you.